Hello everyone, welcome to my 15th episode of G.GOES Live. It's Wednesday again. I'm broadcasting from Per-vurt DJ and Music Production School / Music Technology Store and this beautiful studio with a lot of synthesizers. Today I'm solo. As you can see, I'm solo bi-weekly, and every other week I have a guest. Last week I had Fadi Aswad. We discussed a lot of important things related to sound system installation and dB levels, etc. And let me announce my next week's guest, who's someone loved by everyone, and he is someone who really shaped the electronic dance music scene in Lebanon as well. Next week I will have Mad Jam. Tonight I chose a topic to discuss, which is DJing for non-DJs. Okay, so for you guys who are already DJs, this topic might be a bit amateur for you, but of course I will be giving a lot of tips and tricks, as well as I'm going to be answering questions in the second half of this session. So, DJing, what is this word DJing, which is disc jockey? And let me tell you something briefly about the history of DJing. This word or abbreviation for disc jockey, it was kind of invented in the 1935 by a guy called Walter Winchell. And soon after that, and of course you're interested to know who's the very first DJ ever who played music in public, non-stop music. This guy was Jimmy Saville in 1943. And also soon after that, the very first discotheque opened in France, the Whiskey A Go-Go. And from that period till now, the DJ evolved into, for example, you now can see a DJ in every building or in every house, etc., etc. And some people hate me for that, because so far more than 800 DJs graduated from Per-vurt, according to our application numbers. So first of all, let me tell you what is the concept of DJing. And of course this is something for the people watching now who are willing to become a DJ or who are interested to know more about this, because at some point you might, or they might have some confusion between DJing and performance and music production, etc., etc. So what is this concept of DJing? This concept is actually to mix two or more tracks together in a non-stop flow or mix or set, as we call it. And in DJing, of course, you have different ways of blending or mixing. Sometimes you just move from one track to another. So the concept of DJing in general is to get two songs and mix them together using a table mixer. All right? That's the concept of DJing. Now, of course, some people like to mix more than two tracks, so they go into 4-track mixing. That's when the fun starts to happen. And some people also move into something way different than this, which is performance. I'm going to discuss this in detail tonight, okay? So the concept of DJing basically is when you create a continuous flow, presenting tracks, pre-recorded of course, tracks, that those tracks are already there, produced, and you as a DJ, you will be playing those tracks in a non-stop flow, okay? Whether at a party, a house party, or whether in a club, or whether on a radio, or etc. So the concept here is a bit tricky, because you know the tracks, they come from different tempos or different styles, different genres. So for example, if you have a track that is on 120 BPM, so what is this word BPM, which is beats per minute? That's how you measure the tempo of the song. And you have another track that you would like to mix at the same tempo, but originally it has a different tempo. Let's say it has a tempo of 118, 118, so that's slower. If you mix them together, one of them is of course ahead of time, and you won't have a parallel kind of mix. So the concept of DJing here is to mix two tracks in parallel. they go at the same tempo, at the same time, as if they are one track. So the beats get merged together somehow, they get blended, the harmonies get blended together, and I will be discussing a lot of things related to harmonic mixing and phrase mixing and all these things, all those techniques, okay? So what happens here when you have two tracks and you are mixing them, you have one of them has a different tempo than the other. You have to adjust the tempo so that they match and they just play in parallel. And that's why you need a special device for that, special player for that, which is called a pitch controller. Whether it's a vinyl player with a pitch controller or a CD player with a pitch controller or even a software that can adjust the tempo, that's what you need to have in order to make a track faster or slower so that it matches the other track that the people are listening to. Okay, it's a very easy concept, and applying this is also very easy because you only have to focus nowadays on three major techniques or three major steps in DJing. Now, of course, you have tens of other stuff related to DJing other than those three steps that I'm going to mention, but those are the essentials. First of all, you need to cue a track, so that's the very first essential option or essential feature in a CD player with a pitch control. The second one is the pitch control itself. You use it to match the tempo of the two tracks, make a track faster or slower. And of course, you have the play button. When you press on it, you will be slipping the cue point. So that's a release point. You just play the track and it will play from a specific cue point. So cue point is very important. For example, if you are in a car and you're listening to a CD and you jump to the next track, the track will play automatically, right? So if you go to track 2, it will play. If you go to track 3, it will play. In DJing, you cannot have this happening because you need to control when you want this beat to be released. That's why you take a cue point. That cue point is a point that holds the track at a certain place in time, preferably and most probably at the very first beat of the track, and it waits for you to release it, to slip it. So that's when you slip the cue point and the track will be playing, the track will be released, and then you move to the mixer. So one track is already playing, the other track off air, you adjust the tempo for it, and I will be discussing all these things. You adjust the tempo. That's, of course, you do it on the headphones. So that's when you use the monitoring techniques to preview something off air. Only you can hear it, and you adjust the tempo, you take your cue point, and you wait for the right time. What is the right time? That's the question. And then you press play. Now, of course, you're human at the end of the day. When you release your music, you might not be releasing it exactly on top of the other beat. So that's a human error that can be fixed through something called a jog wheel on the CD player, or nudges on the software, or even on the torque itself when you're playing vinyl. So you can make it faster a little bit or slower a little bit, just for that period of time, and it goes back to the original tempo. So you do this as nudges. You nudge the tempo forward or backward, making it faster or slower for just 1 second or half second, or as long as it's turning the jog wheel. And this way you will just fix your slip cue error. So if you want to look at it in just an example, just think of a swimming contest. Okay, so you have 10 people, or let's say 2 people in this case. They want to have a swimming contest. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, go. One of them jumps a bit earlier than the other. Okay, so what you need to do in this case, because that guy was cheating, right? So he jumped a bit earlier than the other. So you need someone to get in the water somehow and pull him back a little bit to just compensate on the error that he made. Okay, so that's when you press on play a bit before time. So you're releasing the track earlier than it should be, and this is when you need to jog it a bit backward. So you make it faster just instantly, and when you match the beats, you just release your jogging. Nowadays, the jog wheel and this thing called beat matching, when you match the beats, is no longer a priority in DJing, because nowadays you have the sync button, you have tracks that are already edited in a way that match the tempo, etc. So that's why the technology is moving to something more interesting, which is performance. You don't lose time much trying to do the beat matching, which is no longer a characteristic of you being a professional DJ. Now, of course, if you don't know how to beat match, you better stay at home. But what I'm saying is that beat matching is no longer a priority like the days of Jeff Mills in the 20 years ago. So with the technology now, we're moving towards something way interesting in this concept called DJing. So you're no longer DJing, you're no longer playing only 2 tracks at the transitional point and creating a non-stop flow, but some people are moving more into creating some mashups or creating some live performance, adding more loops, not only tracks. They can do loop mixing, and all these things I'm going to discuss in detail in this episode. Okay, so I was just giving you an overview of what's going to happen tonight, and let me go forward with the concept of DJing. As again, I repeat, the concept is to mix 2 or more tracks and create a non-stop flow. That's it. That's the concept of it. Matching the tempo first, of course, cueing the track at a specific point, which is the beat or the first drum pattern, let's say, of your track, and then releasing it at the correct time. You as a human being, you might be releasing the track a bit earlier or a bit ahead of time or whatever. So that's why you use the jog wheel to just push the track forward or backward in time so that the 2 beats can match again, and that's it. Since they have the same tempo, they will run parallel together as long as they are playing. So that was the concept of DJing, and we move into talking a bit about the types of DJs. Okay, like let's say you have 4 types of DJs. You have the DJ who plays on the radio. That's a radio DJ. I'm going to list them and talk about them later. And you have the mobile DJ, you have the resident DJ, and then you have a bedroom DJ. Okay, we all started as bedroom DJs. What does it mean? It means we play in our bedroom. Okay, so we play for our friends in our house, to your mother, to your father. They nag, just turn the music off, etc., etc., etc. That's how we all started DJing. So the bedroom DJ is the very first experience that you will be having. Then you move into being a radio DJ, or it's not necessary to be a radio, or a kind of a mobile DJ or a resident DJ. So what's the difference? Now, a radio DJ, also it's divided into 2 sections. You can be a DJ on the radio who is only a robot. Okay, for example, you're working in the daytime, the traffic jam hours, etc., and your job is to play music that is already listed on a playlist to you by the station manager, and your job is to just do the transitions, not a mix, by the way. You're not allowed to mix like beat matching on the radio if the show is not at night or whatever. Your job is to play for, let's say, half an hour. You only do the transition between the tracks that are already listed to you by the station manager, and you have to do the transition using jingles, like radio station jingles, or you jump to an advertisement every half an hour, let's say. So you have like a table mixer with all the buttons, and each one has a specific jingle on it. Okay, so for example, a jingle that starts with house beat, and you have the jingle, the name of the radio, etc., with effects, and then you have, for example, the other section of the jingle turns into hip hop. That's how the jingle is produced. Okay, so you as a DJ, for example, if you want to move into a track that is hip hop, this is the way it was chosen by the manager of the station. Then you have to choose such jingles to do the transition from house to hip hop, and you have all sorts of jingles that are ready for you to mix, to do the transition, and you have to really know a lot about these things. So actually you're not mixing, you're not beat matching, you're someone doing something that's not really easy, by the way. It's a bit tricky, and a bit you have to memorize and know all the jingles and be up to date with them, and you really have to know the music, the tracks, when to fade out the track, push on a button to insert a jingle, and then push on a button play to play another track. That's how the radio DJ in the daytime, mostly, I mean, not all of them, that's how they work. Now, of course, the second type of the radio DJ is someone who has a show on the radio. And this DJ, for example, at night, on a Friday night, he has a warm-up show, like my guests who were with me, Jason Kakush, Elias, Nesta, those people, they have shows on the radio. And what they do, they mix 1 hour or 2 hours, and they present a non-stop set, and this will be played for like 1 or 2 hours. And there's a difference here between the radio DJ playing music in daytime and the radio DJ playing music at night. I mean, mainly on the weekends and when you have like parties going on, etc. Those DJs, the DJ who has a show, he has the complete freedom to play whatever he wants, and it's a non-stop 1 hour or 2 hour mix with no jingles in it. Maybe he can add, of course, the jingle of the radio, but most of the DJs, they just pre-record this mix. Okay, you pre-record the mix and you send it to the radio. You don't have to go there physically and play live, and it's a bit risky for them if they do a mistake or whatever. So they pre-record it and they send it to the radios through upload, download, etc. And the radio station will schedule this show at a specific hour. Okay, and some other DJs, they have shows that, of course, they can invite guests from abroad, and really those shows are not live. Okay, they pre-record the mix, and basically, to tell you a secret, I also mix for some of the DJs. I can't say the names, but they don't have time to do their mixes on the radio, and I do some of their mixes. So sometimes they send me jingles, and I have to find the right spot to insert the jingle, and this is all done by Ableton or any software that you can do the arrangement mixing. Okay, so that's done with radio DJ. Of course, those DJs, they get a lot of exposure, and they can join the lineup when this radio station does some events, etc., etc., etc. Do they get paid? That's a big question I cannot answer because some of the guys ask me if a DJ can be paid, can get paid on the radio or not. So maybe DJ Easy B can tell us. He is now live with us, and he took a production course here. He's an amazing guy. I call him out. Do you get paid, Easy B, on the radio? Maybe he can answer you right now. So anyway, the third type of types of DJs, you have a DJ called a resident DJ. Okay, a resident DJ basically is a DJ who plays at one club. Okay, and he gets paid by this club. He's a resident, he lives there, kind of. So he's responsible of a certain night or two or all the nights at the club, and he has to play the music that suits the club. So he's not completely free to play anything he wants. Of course, the owner of the place or the manager of the place hires a resident DJ according to, of course, the theme of the place, the target people, the atmosphere, what style of music they want this DJ to play, and this DJ must respect that and play exactly what the club and the people there want. Now, of course, some of those club DJs, they are also the music managers at those clubs. Okay, like for example, also my guest Gunther. Gunther is a very close friend of mine. He was my guest a few weeks ago. He is a resident DJ, but at the same time he decides and he creates this identity of the club when it comes to music. So he gets the bookings, for example, of course with his partners, and he decides or he creates this kind of sound identity for the club. Now, the last thing a resident DJ wants is a manager coming to him and saying, change the music, or don't play this, don't play that. That's really frustrating for DJs. I'm sure many of the DJs now are watching. That's something really frustrating, and at one point you might not really enjoy being a resident DJ because of the stress that you have all the time by people and by the club manager. So better for the resident DJ to be at the same time the music manager of the club, to create the identity that he creates for that club. And of course, the last one is a mobile DJ. A mobile DJ, what does it mean? A mobile, so he travels, he moves from a place to place. And of course, in the mobile DJ section, you also have two categories. You have the local mobile DJ, who plays in many clubs in the same country, so he's not a resident. Okay, so he plays, for example, in a club, then the next day he's playing in another place, the next day he's doing a wedding, etc. He's a mobile DJ. And you have the international mobile DJ, who is, of course, the dream for every DJ to become. Although, by the way, this is an elusive dream, because it's a hectic life, and you don't want to get into these things. Trust me, you can make money, yes, but your life is, if you don't know how to play it smart and focus on your career, you might get into trouble, and you might get into a lot of dark stuff. Okay, so the mobile DJ who's international, like for example Sasha, Digweed, Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, etc. Those DJs, they play. Sometimes they can play 25 times a month. So, like Carl Cox, he spent 2 or 3 New Year's Eves in one night, from country to country with the difference of time. So that's how much they play. Some of them, they play many gigs at the same night, many places, like in Ibiza. You see a DJ in a club, and then like 2 hours later you see him play another gig in another club, and so on. So the mobile international DJ, of course, this DJ is the highest paid, and they travel a lot, and sometimes they can really charge a lot. Like Solomon, sometimes he's charging a hilarious amount of money. He deserves. I'm not saying the opposite, but taking 80,000 euros per 2 hours or 3 hours, or Armin or Tiesto or whatever, they charge a lot of money, and they do like those huge festivals. And of course, this is a dream for every bedroom DJ to become this. So yes, you can reach, you can be that icon, but you need to work on yourself. And I'm going to also explain and give you some tips and tricks on how to promote yourself as a DJ, how to create this identity, and how to create this platform for you to just be there in the local and international market. Of course, with the help of my guests as well, we're always giving you tips and tricks on how to stand out as a DJ, and how to present a good image about yourself, how you play, your music, your flows, etc., etc., etc. Now, you also have types of crowds, not only types of DJs. You have types of crowds. And by the way, let me tell you something. DJing is not about playing in clubs or venues only. Okay, you can play for another crowd. You can play for people driving their car. Okay, so that's a radio DJ, for example. Or you can play for weddings, or you can play for meditation. I know DJs, also my students, they play music at meditation center. They just play music for the people meditating. I know some people also who they play music in the gym. So the target, the people involved, your target is not always the crowd at a club. Okay, you might be fooled by this concept that if you play in a club, that's your dream come true. It's not like that, believe me. If you might have a wider audience, you might have many people listening to you when you play on the radio, for example, whether if it's in a local radio station or an international FM or SoundCloud radio or whatever. For example, if you look at my case, I am mostly active as a radio DJ, and I have my show on Proton LA, which is open to all the world to listen to, and it's saved online. Everyone can go back to the mix and play it again. And by the way, people in clubs, they might enjoy your music there, but the second day they don't even remember your name. So don't get into this illusion of the dream come true if you play in a club or in a venue. There's much more to DJing, so many other crowd to consider, and those people might be more interesting to you, or those platforms. Like if you are an internet radio DJ, which is something really cool nowadays, you can reach more audience and you can promote your set. People might download your set or listen to it again, focus on you more, have your links, they can click on and follow you, etc., etc., etc. So also, as I said, you have other types of targets. It's not only the club people you should focus on. Now, should you consider becoming a DJ? That's the question also. Now, let me tell you something about DJing. First of all, it's fun, it's music, it's art, and believe me, you will never be or get bored from mixing music. And it's always dynamic, it's always creative. This is a creative passion to have, or to just use it as a career. Yes, you can do that. But people who, some people ask me about this, people who take this as a full-time job, believe me, sometimes, yes, it does require a full-time job, because you need to download music, filter music, and be up to date, etc., etc., etc. We will discuss this also in this episode. But considering being a DJ is really something very serious. You can, for example, go play 3 times a week, and you're not working. You're not, for example, holding boxes and delivering them from a place to a place. That's something fun to do. And you're working 3 times a week in a bar, for example, and you're working just from 9 till 1, let's say, weekdays. The other days you have your fixed job. Maybe you can for example, your salary might be $1,000 at a bank or whatever, and you can make this 1,000, an extra 1,000, by working 3 hours a week, each time 3 hours, 3 times a week, sorry, for 3 hours each. How cool is that? Okay, I know some DJs in Lebanon, they make $10,000 or more in a month. That's other than the extra bookings they get when they play in weddings, etc. So that could be a career, yes, and it's so multifaceted. So you can, of course, become a DJ. Maybe you can turn into, you can benefit from you being a DJ in this bar or in this club or in this wedding by maybe having more opportunities, meeting new people. Who knows, you might be managing the music of the place or another place, or you might be selling music, of course illegally, but you can still do that, or it's X and Y and Z. So sometimes someone has, let's say, a resort, and he's in this bar having a drink with his wife. Let's say he listens to you play good music, and he might come to you, approach you, and tell you, okay, come play at my resort, etc., etc., etc. So those were the types of DJs. And if you start to think about how many DJs we have, not only in Lebanon and in the whole globe, you might ask, okay, if I consider becoming a DJ, how can I stand out? What is this something that can make me stand out among all those DJs who already have a history and who are very high in demand? So how can I penetrate the market? How can I stand out? So of course you have to think of so many ways to do that, and this is what also I teach at the DJ school here. There's a topic called music business and artist management, and I will of course tell you some of the tips and tricks on how you can present yourself. Listen, DJing is very easy. We're way beyond that now. Okay, so anyone can master DJing in only 10 hours. Okay, that's using sync or using his own magic or using CD, I don't care. Okay, a DJ can mix, can learn, can master DJing in only 10 hours. That's, I mean, the technical side of it, not the other sides of it. So what makes you stand out? You have so many DJs, they all play well, they all do it technically in a perfect way, and you come in as a new DJ and you want to be special. Think about it. What would you do? Now, of course, your chance, the way you start DJing, you have to play in places where you have a lot of people there. Okay, of course you should start, and I really advise the new DJs to start taking free gigs. Play anywhere. Okay, just go play and focus on just feeling the vibe when you are on this stage or that, because that's very important. It's, believe me guys, it's not about technically being able to mix. We're beyond that now. Technically speaking, we're done with it. Take it for granted, yes. But how you feel on stage, how you prepare your database, how you understand the crowd, how you control the crowd, how you sense the vibe, the overall vibe in this place, and try to bring the people from the corner to the center, that needs a lot of experience. There is no shortcut at all to experience. You have to go there, you have to do mistakes, you have to play for different crowd, you have to play for free, etc., etc., etc. So when you're past this, you can start considering investing in yourself as an artist. So how to launch yourself as an artist? Of course, you should have all the prerequisites. You play good music, you're a good DJ, you know how to do it technically, you know how to control the crowd, you have everything it takes for you to be a special DJ. You only need the exposure. So how do you do that with this market that is so saturated? So you have so many things that I teach here at school, but I will give you some tips and tricks. For example, the first thing to consider is who to approach, okay? Where do you want to play? Okay, you can do mixes online, you can do some videos, you can do a lot of things, but at one point you need to play to a crowd, okay? So that's when you start thinking of hitting the clubs. You go to a club, you knock the door, I want to play. Now that's when you should be smart, okay? If you approach a club music manager or a club owner or whatever, and you tell him, listen, I play good music, I want to come and play, he might say no because he already has DJs, you know. So that's when you need to approach. This first contact with this person is very, very important. How you present yourself. If you're sending an email, for example, you need to send it in a professional way. You need to have an electronic press kit, for example, EPK. You need to have some kind of summary and biography, which is very easy to read, not too long. You don't tell the story of your life, of course, but a very short, straight to the point, very professional biography. You have to have like few mixes online. You can share those mixes with those people, and of course you need to present yourself in a professional way, not in a way that reflects your personality. You don't know how the protocol and the etiquette of approaching, okay? Like, listen to my mix. That's an email that will be rejected and deleted instantly, okay? You have to present an electronic press kit, which is a kind of a mini website. It's a mini website, okay? Just a kind of a PDF file. The person can click on it with a mini website with tabs. You design it, of course, and you need to have, for example, a professional photo shoot, not a photo that you're taking with your iPhone and so many pixels showing, etc. You need to go just invest a little bit in this. Yes, this matters, okay? Those are superficial things, I know, but they do matter in this industry. Also, when you want to become a DJ, you have to be active as a nightlife person. You have to go there, you have to go clubbing, you have to meet those people. DJing nowadays is not very formal. You don't go to a place you don't know and you knock the door and you want to become a DJ. You have to be involved somehow with this club or the owners, or you have to know those people to go club there, to understand the vibe of the club, to start getting somehow into this very small circle of this group. And DJs are very friendly, most of them. Yes, believe me, they are very friendly. Some of them are very snobbish and they don't talk to you, etc. But really, some of them are very friendly. Don't ever talk business to a DJ when he's playing, for example. That's a no. You're not professional. Don't go there to a club to give him a CD, for example. He will throw it away. You have to understand some etiquettes of how to approach. And from that point, of course, those details I discuss in the course here. And when you approach a person, don't give him a CD, give him a USB, for example. That's the very, very simple thing to consider. A USB will never be thrown away. He will use it. He might not listen to your music in it. That's a percentage, that's a probability, but he will not throw a USB. He will use it for transferring files or whatever. And that's a $3 USB. It's not expensive, okay? But the way you present a USB is different than presenting a CD with a nylon cover, or not even a cover, or you're scratching on it. Just present a USB, and now you can think deeper inside the USB. What do you put in the USB? You just put your set, you put some links. maybe you can put something that might interest him, or maybe you can put something that is funny or whatever. You have to get friendly with those people, and that's the bridge. Okay, that's the very first bridge. Now, of course, some people get more chance when they are really into the circle, the inner circle, like friends of friends, colleagues, acquaintances, etc. And they might invite you to play once or twice at their club, and this is when you need to show your capabilities and to prove yourself as a good DJ. Now, of course, if you go there also, you need to think deeper. You got this chance to play at a club. Don't miss the opportunities that you might get from that event, because when you're there, you're overwhelmed and all you can think of is just you going on stage and playing, okay, and you're well prepared, etc. No, you have so many other things to consider, because when you are there in this scenario, you are facing the people, you are in the club, you're headlined or you're warming up or whatever. You can benefit from that event by, for example, giving 100 USBs to people there. Okay, you have to invest. You cannot have a career in DJing or anything else. You cannot be a hot dog shop if you don't pay some money. You have to invest on yourself, okay? And some people already invested by coming to Per-vurt and learning. That was their first step. Now, of course, I have so many DJs, by the way. They are already playing now in major clubs. I have female DJs, I have male DJs. Some of them, like for example, Noor Jaber, she's playing in Berghain, and this is one of the maybe the top in the top 5 in the world. She plays there. I have a lot of people playing in UK. I have Cynthia now playing in TED. I have Karim. So many people are playing in clubs, and yes, it is the very first investment to come and learn from a professional. Now, as I said, when you are there playing this gig, you can distribute your USBs. You can, for example, hire someone to take professional video shooting for you that you might use later on in promotion. You might, for example, pay an extra charges for someone to install a LED screen behind you and subliminally put your logo or website. You might design a small light box, put it in front of you. Those are promotional material you should really consider, and we discuss this a lot at this school here, and you have some tips and tricks, things you can do behind the scene, under the table, etc. So that's how you stand out, by you presenting yourself. Of course, if you know how to mix in a more creative way, some like not a boring way of mixing, that's how you stand out as well. The way you behave on stage might be a characteristic of you standing out. Some people, they go and do a show, for example, like Sven Vath. He's an entertainer on stage. That's why people love him. You might question his music a little bit and the way he's mixing. He does a lot of mistakes, and he says that out loud, but he's an entertainer. He does some gestures, some moves, and people love him for that, and I'm one among his fans. Okay, so you can also stand out by the originality of your tracks, by the way you do your own mashups and remixes. You play music that no one else has. You might, for example, integrate some live performance with your DJ mix, etc., etc., etc. You have so many ways to stand out. If you are there waiting for someone to knock your door and book you, you're gonna wait forever, and believe me, you won't get a chance. You have to go there, you have to be there, and you have to always stay active in nightlife, and in whether you do it, of course, you can do it online, you can do it physically, you can being there, etc., etc., etc. Now, in the promotion side of it, of course, you have to, it's part of your investment. You have to promote yourself, like sponsored ads, etc., 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 to present mixes to the people. You have really so many things. If you like to learn more about this, it's a 6-hour course. Sorry, we talk about a lot of tips and tricks here at the school. Now, the second thing you should consider is the music style. So, what style do you want to play? What style are you into? And of course, you have so many styles. You have the electronic dance music, you have the 4/4 time signature, you have the other side, you have the hip hop, you have the R&B, you have dance music, you have chill out. It depends where you're playing, in a club or not, to which crowd, etc., etc., etc. But the philosophy of being a DJ, wherever you are, is to present something for the crowd. Okay. Now this crowd might be crowd that they are going to just listen to your music. Like, let's say you're a producer, and people are going to hear your production. Okay, so you can play your own music. But if you're playing as a resident DJ, don't do this mistake and playing what you like. Okay, you have to play what people want. And this is a mistake every single DJ, I'm sure about this, every single DJ, and I'm one of them, did in the past. Okay, we all played music, the music we love, but that music, because we love, we didn't know that it doesn't fit this place or this event. Don't do this mistake, or do it once or twice, because you will learn from that. But keep this in mind. The philosophy of you being a DJ is going there, controlling the overall vibe, creating a flow, moving, letting the people gather together and go into a certain trip, whether this trip is a dancing trip or emotional trip or whatever. Okay, depends what you're playing, but always focus on the crowd. You have to read the crowd to please the crowd. Otherwise, the club manager or owner can only put a playlist, press play on the playlist, it automates itself, and he can save some money. So you're there to create, to do a change, to create a certain flow. You're not there to play your own music only, and you're not there to play what you like because you like to hear it out loud. That's not what a resident DJ must think of, unless you are the music manager, you create a certain identity of the music in a club, and mainly we're talking about underground music clubs. That's when you play what you like, because you are the creator of this vibe. But what you like and what the theme of the club is must be in harmony together. Okay. Now, you also have in the music, in the DJing world, you have something called a flow. Basically, there are 4 flows in creating a non-stop mix. For example, you have the opening flow, the warm-up, and the main, and the closing. So when you are, for example, waiting for the people to come, if you're doing an event, or when you're opening a set, you have to consider playing some really specific style of music that is not for the dance floor, of course. It's just in the background. It's not annoying, because you are building the mood of the people. The very first, like, half an hour or whatever, that's when you are kind of just having an ambience being created. And when you move into the warm-up, that's the most risky flow you can ever think of. You have to be very responsible, and it's really something very important. To me, the warm-up is the most important flow, because when you warm up, you're warming up. You have to consider at that point the people are starting to drink. Some people, they are starting to take drugs, for example, I don't know. And at that point in time, you are building the mood of the people. If you fail at this, the whole night for them will be a nightmare. Okay, they will not remember good moments at all. You have to create a certain flow in the warm-up to prepare them for the main set and what's going to happen as the peak hour, the peak time, the dance floor, floor filler, and stuff like that. So the warm-up is very important. And the main set, usually the main set, whether you're playing yourself or there's an international DJ playing after you, etc., the main set is the main set. So it's when everyone is just in the moment, enjoying the peak of the night, dancing, etc. Mainly the main set is dance floor oriented, more than shoulder oriented. It's just more jumping oriented. And then you have the closing set. The closing set, basically, it's the last flow. Sometimes they hire a DJ to do a special closing set. We in Lebanon, unfortunately, we understand a closing set in a wrong way. The closing set, they play harder music, they play more energetic music. That's not how a closing set should be, in my opinion. Of course, a closing set is a set that takes you back home in a good mood. You won't be bothered or annoyed by a lot of hard stuff going on. So it's kind of orgasmic, kind of this music that really closes your night in a good way. You don't want to be annoyed by the music. You don't want to have tinnitus at the end of the day. You want to go back, leave with a good memory, and basically that's what it is about. So now let's talk about the material, the tracks. A DJ, of course, he wants to play music, and how do you get your music? So some people, they download illegally. Shame on you guys, shame on me sometimes. But you must buy your music, because this is when you care for the quality of it. When you buy the MP3 or the WAV version, you will buy it with no decompression or with no compression, and then changing bit rate and the sampler, etc. So you need to get music that is not fucked up. Simply saying, okay. And some people, they get promos from labels, like in my show, for example. My show Proton on Proton LA is promo only. That's out of respect for the people and DJs who send me promo. I play only promos. So promos means the track is not yet released. Basically that's how you get your music, and the more original you are, of course, the better you are at mixing, and even the sound of your music will sound better. And last week, by the way, me and Fadi Aswad, we spoke about the levels on the mixer and so on. So you need to really worry about these things, because at the end of the day, people might think that you are distorting the music, you are not playing a good music, etc., while the engineer, who's not an engineer, of course, he has your mixer with a lot of red lights. Okay, that's not cool. Now let's talk about the gear. And when you think of DJing, of course, you think of what player should I use. In DJing, you can mix 2 or more tracks using many. And by the way, that was an episode I did, and I discussed in detail. It's called the Essential DJ Setup. So if you want to know more about gears, you can go back in the episodes. I think it was G.GOES Live 6. I'm not really sure about the number, but I talked for 1 hour about gear. But let me give you a summary. You can use vinyl, of course, vinyl player with pitch controller, and you can turn this vinyl, which is an old vinyl player, into a controller using the time code technology. And I will discuss this in a minute. You have the CD player, early 90s, of course, Pioneer, they started releasing those CD J500, etc. And next week with Mad Jam, of course, we're gonna talk about this a lot. And they evolved into creating a technology that communicates with digital. Okay, so digital is the third option you might have, which is a controller and a laptop or an iPad or an iPhone. So when you go digital, you use a software for that, and you control the software by a DJ controller. Okay, so it looks like the CD player, but it's not analog. It's not, I mean, as a stand-alone player. It has to be connected to your laptop. Whatever is processed is inside your laptop. It's not on the machine itself. The machine is only sending MIDI signal to your software, telling it what to do, when to play a track, what track to load, etc. You have an interface in the software, like Tractor Pro, for example, which is the #1 software in the world, of course. And they also, the Native Instrument, they also have their own controllers, like the S8, the S4, etc. And you can just trigger or control your software via this controller. And this technology is very cheap, by the way, relatively to the CD players and the mixers. Of course, it's way cheaper to have a controller, a good controller, and of course a good software for that. And the fourth way of playing music is live performance. And this is not DJing, this is live performance. Me and Elias Stamina, also with Siad Sarur, I had them once, and I had Stamina 3 times so far, and we talked a lot about live performance, how to perform live using not CDJs, not using only tracks. You can play with loops, samples from tracks, etc., etc., etc. Or you might, of course, introduce some gear like synthesizers, drum machines, and so on. So that's called live performance. It's also divided into 2 sections. You can be a live performer, of course, playing loops and samples and your own tracks as a producer, doing a lot of improvisation live, and you can also be a live performer by integrating live concept with CDJ or with vinyl or with the controllerism in digital. So you can be playing pre-recorded music for other producers and implementing some other ways of mashing up loops, changing stuff. And for example, you have in Tractor nowadays, they have this new technology of integrating a step sequencer inside their software, so they are getting closer to Ableton Live. And if you look beside me somewhere here, you have the Ableton push. Of course, that's what live performance is all about with Ableton Live. Okay, that's the engine for live performance, which has no competitor. Of course, they are patented with this technology, and it's really becoming so dominant nowadays in the Lebanese market also. And I'm very proud that I got this technology into Lebanon since 5 years, and believe me guys, the amount of sales and the amount of people coming for that is really it really draws a big exclamation mark on my face. So we are really moving towards performance nowadays. And then you have the hybrid setup. The hybrid setup is a setup that combines many of the previously mentioned before, like CD player, vinyl, and a synthesizer and drum machine, etc., etc., etc. So the most important one I want to discuss now is the controllers, the digital technology that we are in now. The controller with Tractor Pro, for example, you can mix 4 decks, and 2 of those decks could be turned into either a remix deck. So what is a remix deck? A remix deck is some kind of pads. You have pads where you can launch loops and samples on the fly. Okay, so you're not only DJing 2 pre-recorded songs, you're also doing some kind of remixes live. And you can also use the other deck to have a stem deck. Stem deck means this is a technology invented by Native Instrument, by Tractor, and they created a new file format. You have the MP3, the WAV, etc. They created a new file format, which is the MP4, and this file format is dissected already into 4 sections. So the producer or the label, they are selling now the track as 4 layers. You have the bass line as a layer completely independent, the drums as a layer completely independent, the melodies independent, the vocal independent. So what you can do as a performer, you can load 2 MP4s and just turn off completely the drums from one song and mix drums from another song. And let me tell you something, this whole thing about controllerism or about digital technology is based on sync. So for people who are always arguing against sync, let me tell you something, sync is not something you should really reject. Sync is part of the technology that you are using already on CDJs. CDJ is this digital technology. If you want to argue about sync and you are a vinyl player, I can understand a little bit, but you will be a bit démodé, and you will be a bit I don't know what to call it. I forgot the word of it in English. Okay, you will be kind of old-fashioned, and you know what I mean. Move with the technology, man. What the fuck? You have a lot of stuff the technology is offering you. Don't face it, because you will be stepped on in the future. Okay, stepped over. Sync is part of the technology. You should and you can, and I completely for it, not against it. Use it because it lets you focus on some other things. Okay, like it lets you focus on playing loops, playing samples, mashing up 2 songs, 4 songs, etc. together, playing MP4, and be more creative nowadays. So one thing that is very, very important about the techniques of mixing, you can mix 2 tracks, like blending them together. You can mash up layers of a track with another layer with other layers of the other track. You can one of the techniques of mixing, you can do just transitions. Okay, and I have some questions about this topic I will answer in the second half of this episode. You can just do transitions. The most important thing is to have a continuous mix. You don't have stops, you don't have silence. So choose any way you want. As long as the crowd is happy, I'm happy, you know. So really, some people, they argue a lot. This guy is using sync. This guy is using CDJ. This guy is using a pre-recorded set. I don't give a fuck, to be honest. My goal as a clubber is to go there and listen to good music. That's it. I want to hear good music. That's what matters. No one backstage matters to me as a crowd. I don't care if the club owner is judging the DJ. I don't care what the DJ is using. I don't care if he's pressing sync or not. What I care for is to listen to good music. And between bracket, good music is good music. You have taste, of course. And I am interested in listening to a non-stop harmonic mix. And this is when we get into another topic, which is harmonic mixing. This is something really important. And harmonic mixing, basically by Mixed In Key, this is the software that is everyone is using. And I'm very fortunate that Mixed In Key, we signed a deal together 4 years ago, and they are officially sponsoring Per-vurt as one out of the only 5 schools in the world, and they offer Mixed In Key at 50% to our students. So what the software does, basically, it analyzes your music and it tells you that each track, what key it's produced at, okay? So for example, you have a C major track and another track that is, let's say, A minor track, and according to the chart, those two tracks can be played perfectly together because they are from the same harmony. And by the way, I'm not going to discuss a lot about Mixed In Key and about harmony, because I am actually leaving this to a special episode on G.GOES Live to discuss harmonic mixing and Mixed In Key in specific. So when you are blending music together, doing mashup and stuff like that, you really need to consider not only the beat matching and the technical side of DJing. You need to consider the harmony side of it. Do they match as in key? Does this melody match with this melody? Does this chord match with this bass line, etc.? You need to really focus on how they sound together as in the harmony. It's not only about beat matching anymore, okay? There's much more to DJing. In the old days, 20 years ago, the judgment was if you can beat match or no. That's it. They did not care much about harmonic mixing. Nowadays, you don't really care about beat matching because it's a prerequisite. It's just it's taken for granted anyway. It's something that you have with your title as being a DJ. And now what matters, one of the big things that matter is harmonic mixing. Of course, you need, if you're doing a mashup or if you're doing a live performance, you need to create a transition that is harmonic. And the last thing you want is a harmony clash. Now when you do beat clash, like when you're not beat matching, that's not your to me that's not your fault. That's the fault of the person who hired you, because beat matching, as I said, is not an important thing. It should be there, but it should be taken for granted, as in it should be there before you title yourself as a DJ. We're done with this. But now we have to look at how you present a harmonic mix, a continuous flow, a journey in your mix, in any style you want. By the way, the DJs on the radio that I mentioned before, they have this radio show at daytime, or the DJs that play music in a bar on a happy hour or whatever, they shouldn't do harmonic mixing at all, because when you are driving your car, you should, as a listener, of course, it's way more important for you to listen to different keys, different moods, because each key in music, it represents a certain mood, okay? So you need a radio DJ. It's not allowed at some radios to do a lot of harmonic mixing, because that's against the rule of broadcasting during the daytime for people driving their cars. You need to change the style, you need to change the mood, etc. But when you are building a flow in a club, especially with underground music like techno, progressive house, tech house, trance, etc., you need to respect the harmonic mix, the harmonic flow between the tracks, okay? So we talked about a lot of techniques. I don't care what technique you're using, whether you're transitioning between tracks, whether you're just the track finishes and you press play and the track comes in, or whether you do a professional non-stop mix, or whether you blend or mash up, or etc., etc., etc. So let me continue with moving into production. Now, when you are a DJ, you play at clubs, etc., and then you start thinking, what's next? Okay, and that's a topic I'm not going to discuss a lot tonight, but of course, there's much more to DJing. You can get into production, but there is a bridge in between. Okay, you have to know one thing, which is very important, that if you are a DJ, it's not obligatory for you to become a producer, and vice versa. If you're a producer, it's not obligatory for you to become a DJ. I know a lot of producers who they don't DJ at all, and there is a bridge between you being a DJ, starting as a DJ, and you want to take yourself into another dimension. Okay, so when you want to cross this bridge is editing or doing some kind of techniques, edits to your music files, using a production software like Ableton Live. For example, let's say you are someone who's playing music and you have some tracks that don't have a long intro, and enough intro for you, or you have a track that is a radio edit track and you want to make it into an extended mix so that you can play it easily, you can mix it easily with another track. So this is when you get into editing, and you can create an intro for it and create an outro for another track, and that's how you get into the production, because you're using the software of production to do editing for you as a DJ. And let me tell you a secret, I do a lot of edits to DJs in Lebanon. They come to me, they give me some database, and they say, look, those are short radio edits, and I want you to transform them into a club mixes. And that's really, really interesting and important, because back to the database, the music files that you buy, you have two categories of music. You have music produced just for the radio, okay? In the radio, they don't let you hear a boring intro with a very slow build-up, etc., like in the techno music and the extended music. And of course, you as a DJ, in my opinion, you should not play radio tracks. The track on the radio is just 2 minutes or 3 minutes with no intro, with no outro. So they just play the music directly with the verse or the chorus or with the etc. In the radio, they don't let the driver, for example, or the one listening to the radio, listen to a boring section called an intro and a boring section called an outro. Those music files are called extended DJ format tracks. Those are made for DJing. So when you want to DJ, you need to get special tracks. They could be a remix or edits of the original radio edit track, but it will be a DJ format, an extended mix with an intro and an outro, because that's what you need in DJing. You need to mix the intro on top of a section, preferably the outro of the other song, okay? If you're playing a song, the crowd is listening to a song, you as a DJ need to cue your track in the intro and try to mix it in a place where you start blending and you do phrase mixing. And by the way, I wanted to talk about these things tonight, but apparently I don't have much time. I will do another V2 of this specific episode, which is DJing, 2 weeks from now. Next week I have Mad Jam, by the way, and then the week after I will continue talking about this detail. So back to this bridge that I told you about. You can get into production by just, first of all, getting yourself used to using this software to do edits of your track. Sometimes, for example, you have an extended, very long track and you want to make it a shorter version, and that's when you need to cut from the track some phrases and bars that are repeating themselves, and you need to get a lot of knowledge about this thing called beats, bars, phrases, measurements, patterns in music, etc., because you can't cut from any place to any place. You need to do some warping in Ableton, for example. You need to cut from a specific beat to a specific beat without anyone noticing that there was a cut at this section. That's editing. And my advice to anyone who's a DJ and who wants to get into production, get into editing first. Get into using Ableton for doing arrangement mixes, like the mixes I do for some DJs on the radio in Lebanon. And in this direction, you might get used to using the software. And soon after that, you might see that you are able to create some mashups, or just adding loops from the library onto the track and changing some aspects of the tracks, doing some between bracket remixes, that is not official remixes, of course, and so on. So basically, this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So many other aspects related to DJing. Really, a lot of things. I will continue talking about these things not next week, the week after, because I have to take your questions now, and before I say goodbye, of course. So I have questions. I have a lot of questions, actually. I have a question from Mark Aboud. He's saying, can you please talk about your first time DJing in front of a crowd in a club and what lessons you learned looking back at it now? Well, Mark, let me tell you something. My first experience in DJing was, of course, in a graduation party at school. I was too young, and it was the worst. It was the worst gig ever for the people there. Now I can understand and I can read what was drawn on their faces. Maybe they hate me till now for that. Of course, you should do those mistakes. You should do a lot of things. You should have a lot of negative comments and stuff like that, so that you can learn. And if you ask me how was the experience was so bad. It was so I enjoyed it so much, of course, but I was playing only the music that I wanted to play. I wasn't even looking at the people. I did not respect the crowd. I did not respect the ambience and the vibe of the place. I was just too egoic and too excited at the same time to listen to the music I like out loud. That's it. And apparently the music I like was the music that everybody hated back then, and I ended up playing for no one. Everyone was just looking at me, giving me this bad look, and I was always trying to convince myself that no, they are just shy to come and dance. And what I learned now, you said, looking back at it now, lessons I learned is that you should really respect the event itself. You should really respect the crowd. You're there to play music to make the people enjoy it. Otherwise, go play at your room. Because back then I used to have equipment at my bedroom, and I just did the same thing. It's really something bad. I have a question from Nick Shalhoub. He's saying, what is the music genre that is the toughest to mix live? Not necessarily EDM. Did mixing become more or less of an art after the new generation of mixers and MIDI controllers? Well, the second part of your question, Nick, of course, mixing became an art now just because you're using the machine as an instrument. It's no longer a CD player or a mixer or whatever. You have a lot of features on those players you can use as a real instrument, like a guitar or whatever. You can treat your machines in this way nowadays. So when you can use some effects that can self-oscillate, for example, you can create some really complex patterns added to your track. When you do loop mixing, for example, when you add some effects, you are changing some aspects of that track. And talking about the technologies nowadays, with, of course, native instrument and the Tractor Control S8, playing stem files I talked about earlier in this session, you are not really only mixing two songs together nowadays. You are making more and more of mashing up, blending, remixing live on the stage. For example, the S8 has 14 channels. So why do they have 14 channels? What do you think? It's just a way of getting inside live performance, not only playing music that is there. You are now actually creating some stuff a bit close to production, okay? And of course, in the new Tractor, as I said, they included now a step sequencer, so you can just sequence beats and snares and hi-hats with whatever you're playing. You can play MP4, you can play, it's just a huge transition nowadays with the new generation of mixers and MIDI controller. It's an art now. It's not just a technical thing to do, because some people are being healed nowadays with music. And I know one of my students, Eva Zayat, she is doing meditation with music. I forgot the real name of it, but she's doing something really magical. You can heal yourself with music. And you said, what is the music genre that is the toughest to mix? Let me tell you something, Nick. any music style is tough to mix if you don't know what you're doing, of course. If you know what you're doing and you are creative, there's no music that is tough. Now, let me get deeper into this subject, because I have another question related to this subject as well. The toughest style is the style of music that wasn't produced electronically, I mean using a computer. Because when you produce music using a software, you have all your beats at the same distance from each other. If you're doing 4/4 or any other time signature, you have all your beats with a stable constant tempo, and those are kind of quantized all together inside the track. Now when you mix music from the 70s, for example, and this music was recorded live with all the human errors in it, so the grid, the tempo, the beats are not equally at the same distance from each other, because that was a human playing live, and the human is not a metronome, is not a robot. So you have a lot of changes when you are mixing those styles, and some of them, they have key shifts that is not so usual nowadays. They have key shifts in the bridge, etc. When you mix old music, I think, in my opinion, this is a bit it's the toughest, because you have to always follow and jog, and you have to always, the music back then was so diverse, and nowadays you hear music that they are all great tracks, but when it comes to structure, it's like a copy paste. Okay, so in the back then, you had a lot of creativity in the time signatures, in the key changes, in the way the track was structured and produced and recorded. So yeah, that's I think, in my opinion, it's the toughest. And Priscilla asked me something about this, and I will answer her in a minute. Ryan Akiki, my weekly guest, my weekly fan: can DJing in Lebanon be a full-time job? Well, Ryan, I talked about this, by the way. If you go back to the first 15 minutes, I had your question in mind, and I said yes, it could be a full-time job. You can make a lot of money by being a DJ. And as I said, some DJs in Lebanon are taking an average of $10,000 a month. That's other than the other things they do on the side, like weddings, like gigs, traveling outside, etc., etc., etc. You can teach at one point, like I'm doing. Ribal Al Aris: what does it take for a DJ to make it to mix in a good club in Lebanon? Well, Ribal, also this is a question I had in mind. I answered. You need to approach the people responsible of the lineup in a way that is smart at some point, and you have to be there. You have to belong to those people somehow. That's my opinion. And of course, you need to work on yourself a lot. You need to have. There are a lot of prerequisites. You need to be a good DJ. You know how to do harmonic mixing. You know how to do beat matching. This is a package. After you finish with this package, and I'm sure you've done that by now, Ribal. When you have this package of you, technically speaking, you're a good DJ. You know what you're doing. You can run a night, etc., etc. That's when you have to get into the approaching side of it, having an APK, having a platform online, etc., etc. This is something I discuss deeply in the course of DJing at the school. I talked about it tonight in brief. Karim Makarim is asking, what is the cost to hire a DJ according to his experience, music genre, type of party event? Karim, this is something, it's like you're putting salt on my wound. 5 years ago, I decided to create not a group. I forgot the name of it in English, but in Arabic it is a community. Maybe I forgot the real name of it. Na'abi, for DJing, and they refused my offer because I wanted to protect those DJs from being paid way less than they deserve. A DJ is the most important player in the night itself, because he's the one responsible for music. Without music, people will leave, of course, and they pay him really some very modest fee. And I wanted to create this whole thing, this whole evolution in the DJ market. Unfortunately, they refused it. And I wanted that the DJ has a minimum charge, and he has a membership card. Without it, he cannot perform. He's not official, etc., etc., etc. And he has to pay some modest amount of money per year, so that we offer we offer this community back again some with extra stuff, etc. So they refused this, and let me tell you something. In Lebanon, they can pay you from $40 per night, yeah, unfortunately, to an open budget. I know some DJs, they charge, as I told you, they charge per gig $10,000, $15,000. Lucky them, of course, and who knows, you might be one of them one day, and I wish you would. You were a great student here as well, Kareem, and I'm sure you will reach some place. Focus on your voice. I love your voice. Your mother does too. I have a question from Eli Ashkar. He's saying, did DJing become all about beat matching and track selection, and do you recommend for DJs in Lebanon to use a music pool? Can you tell us more? Eli, I answered this, of course, because you asked. I had this in mind, and I answered this somehow during this episode, but let me add to what you asked. It's not about beat matching at all. I hate this word nowadays. I don't like to judge a DJ because he knows how to beat match. I am with sync, yes, out loud, I am with it, but I'm against it if someone doesn't know how to beat match. Yeah. You cannot do sync only, and if the sync button stops working, what do? You should know how to beat match, but I am with using sync. Beat matching is nothing nowadays. Don't show your muscles because you can beat match. I will not take this seriously. Show your muscle by the flow that you're creating, by the originality of your tracks, by how you do harmonic mixing, by the techniques you do on the mixer rather than on the player itself. Now, of course, if you're using a controller, there's much more to do on the pads and stuff, yes, but the controller is about sync. It's not DJing, it's performance. Performance is sync based. Track selection, of course, and you recommend DJs to use music pool. Music pools are many, to be honest, and the best thing you can do, who was asking? Yes, Eli. The best thing you can do is to actually buy music from Beatport, create an account, follow the artist, follow the label, and you will be getting the highest quality music and most updated ones. And Eli, by the way, you also were a good student. You took the course in a very fast way, and I'm really proud of you. I have a question from Priscilla. She's asking, I would love to listen you discuss about something which is fast transitions without or with very short mixing for funk and quantized music, because playing this way is considered unacceptable in Lebanon, despite the fact that it's near impossible to ride a pitch for 2 minutes. What's wrong with just being an old school selector? Priscilla, by the way, in reggae, a DJ is someone who adds vocal on the track that is selected by a selector. So those are two people in DJing, not one. The selector, you mentioned this in bracket, I like that. Priscilla, let me tell you something. By the way, also, I miss you, and you were an excellent student at Per-vurt as well. DJing is about presenting good music to the people without any pauses in between the track, okay? So what does this summarize? It summarizes, first of all, you can finish a track and press play on the other track with zero pause in between. That's a transition, okay? That's okay. Don't worry and don't focus about what other people in the industry, DJs, producers, club owners, promoters, people who just stand next to you and stare at what you're doing. Care about the crowd. Care about the overall place. If you are presenting a continuous mix with no mistakes in harmony or beat matching, that's perfect already. And let me tell you something, Priscilla, by the way, and I do this with production and DJing. Some people have techniques in mixing. It doesn't mean that it's the best technique. It's just a technique. It's just different. If you play music using any technique, it's okay. Music equal freedom. It's a freedom. You should not really handcuff yourself or limit yourself with rules and regulations. playing music is performing. It's like doing art, painting with no rules. Okay, that's how you also play music. Whether it's good or it's not good, that's what people can say. She played a good set or not a good set. People won't judge you if you used sync or transition or blending or beat matching or whatever. Now, your question is very important, by the way, Priscilla. You're asking me about transitions if you're playing funk music and unquantized music. That's very important. I mentioned this earlier, a few minutes ago, that that was a question by Nick Shalhoub. The toughest genre to mix is actually the tracks that were not produced on a computer, in a software. Those tracks are not quantized. What does quantize mean? Quantize mean the beats are aligned to a grid that has a very equal distance from the grid after that. Basically, that grid is a 1/4, which is a quarter bar, which is where the beats are in 4/4 signatures. So when people used to record music in the past, they used to press record and do it analog, no computer. And when they used to if they do a mistake, they repeat the mistake and they just cut the tape and glue the tape. It was cut and glue. It wasn't produced digitally, so you have a lot of variation of tempo, and the beats are not at an equal distance. So beat matching those tracks is very tricky and very hard, because if you are playing the same tempo, it doesn't mean the two tracks are on the same tempo all the time. They are on the same tempo as the screen is saying to you, yes. Or if you're playing vinyl, it's even harder. But at one point, those tracks will drift away from each other, because that's how they are recorded. They are recorded with the human error, with no quantization, okay? So beat matching those tracks is really tricky and really hard to achieve, especially that you don't have much time in those tracks. Those are very short tracks. Some of them, or most of them, or I don't know, they don't have intros and outros. They don't have empty beats. You jump directly, sometimes after a bar or a phrase, you jump directly to the chorus or to the verse, and you don't have much time to do those jogging. So this is when you choose to do transition mix, and that's one way of mixing. It's not wrong at all. It's one way of mixing. As you have the beat matching and the blending. That's one way that I respect and appreciate. And on the other side, I have a transitional way of mixing, which I also respect and appreciate at the same level. Same thing. It's the same way. I, as a crowd, I want to hear good music, not transitions and beat matching. Of course, I don't want to hear the beats are not matched and they are kind of interfering in a bad way, etc. But the job of the good DJ is to make sure he's always beat matching, okay? And if that was hard, you can do it as a transition. Now, inside this topic of transitioning between two tracks, you have a lot of ways. You can just finish a track and press play directly to play another track. You can, for example, do some teasing effects between the songs and just press play, remove it, shows us for one chop of a sample, or etc. That's one way of just presenting a track as in a teasing way until you mix it. You have some techniques. You do scratching, for example. You find a point at the edge of the bar, or at the edge of the phrase, or before you get into a bridge or whatever, or inside the bridge. You have to find those points, and you do some kind of scratching, for example, and you just continue playing with the other song. And my colleague and a teacher here at Per-vurt as well, Lethal Skills, is an excellent example for this. We will demonstrate this for you when he's back, maybe in a month or two. And other ways of doing those transitions can be through using effects, for example, like a long reverb, as if the track is fading into space, and then you just surprise the people with a new song. You can do this with R&B and hip-hop and those kind of music. So transitioning between tracks is also a way, as I said. But let me tell you something, which is what I really wanted to say. If you really wish to mix, Priscilla, if you really wish to mix those music, funk music, music from vinyl, etc., my advice to you is that take those tracks into Ableton Live and rewarp them again. What does it mean? Because the beat grid in the software might not be able to fix this natural mistake of 0.13%, which is the natural mistake of converting audio from wave to MP3. You will have this kind of VBR, or this kind of variation in the tempo that will result from this downsampling, etc. Now, when you want to play those music and mix them professionally, my advice to you, go into Ableton and come here and take this course. It's a mini course, a 6 hours course. I will teach you how to edit and rewarp all the music. When you get inside Ableton and you bring the beats back, you're fixing the error of the human who was playing drums or bass or whatever. You're bringing those elements back to the grid, not in 100%. Of course, we will leave some swing and groove if you like to, but you will have a track that is stable in tempo, and you will have the beats on a constant tempo. Of course, you will be doing some time stretching, and in Ableton you can preserve this and you don't have any artifact. It's really advanced what we're doing, and I do this a lot for some DJs. I rewarp some music from the 70s or 80s or even 60s, and they can play them right away, instantly. You don't have any mistake. Once they are beat matched, they are beat matched. When you do your database like this, and you will have two advantages. The first one is that your tracks are warped again, as if the track was recorded again in 2017 now with all the technologies. You will not have any changes in the harmony of the track, nothing to be mentioned. And the second thing you will benefit from, because that's part of your question also, is that if the track doesn't have a long intro or an enough outro or whatever, or if the track was too long, for example, you can do those edits. Okay, if you have one bar of intro only and you want to make it for at least a phrase, because that's the universal dimension of your musical phrases, one phrase, 4 bars, you can just do this edit and make this one bar of intro into a phrase, or even into 2 phrases. Sometimes you might take things from the outro or from the middle of the track and include them in your intro, and in this way your mixes will improve like 100,000%. I really advise you to come and take this course. You will benefit a lot from it, and you will be playing your music in the most professional way, no mistakes whatsoever. So I hope I answered your question, Priscilla, and all the guys who asked. You said, what's wrong with just being an old school selector? Nothing at all, and I am for it. You can just do anything you want under one condition, that you present a good mix. Guys, I'm done with this show. It's 1 hour and 30. I cheated today, tonight. You guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here all the time, always. I'm really happy to be here with you always. This is the 15th episode of G.GOES Live. Next week I have Majam, and the week after I will be solo to continue what I was talking about tonight. I will go deeper into the techniques of DJing, of course. Thanks again, and sending you all the love and all my respect. Cheers.